The dog came home alone, but the leash in his mouth said his Marine was still waiting. At 4:17 in the morning, Camp Alder lies beneath a gray North Carolina sky, the kind that makes every building look colder than it is. Rainwater gathers along the curbs. Pine needles cling to the pavement. Somewhere beyond the eastern fence, thunder rolls away toward the coast, leaving behind a silence too wide for comfort. The Marines at the main gate have been awake for nearly 20 hours. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks and his K-9 partner have been missing since the storm swallowed the old service roads north of the base. Search teams have returned with mud on their boots and nothing in their hands. No radio signal. No flashlight. No answer. Corporal Daniel Price is staring into a paper cup of coffee when something pale moves beyond the security lights. At first, he thinks it is fog drifting low across the road. Then the shape steps forward. For pause. Pointed ears. A body built for discipline, now trembling with exhaustion. Ghost walks toward the gate. The white German shepherd is so covered in red clay that his coat looks rust-colored beneath the lamps, but the clean fur around his eyes still shines like frost. His breathing is slow and controlled. His left paw favors the ground. He does not whine. He does not bark. In his mouth hangs a black leather leash. The far end drags behind him, empty. Price lowers the coffee. Ghost. The dog stops 10 feet from the barrier. Water slips from his whiskers. His amber eyes move from Price to the road behind him, then back again. Price steps outside, careful and quiet. Where's Sergeant Brooks? Ghost does not move. Behind the gatehouse, 2 more Marines rise from their chairs. One reaches for the radio. Another whispers Isaiah's name as though saying it softly might change what the empty leash means. Ghost walks forward and lays the leather strap at Price's boots. The metal clasp is still closed. It is not snapped. It is not bent. Nothing has torn it free. Price crouches and touches the mud-darkened leather. Ghost watches his hand. You came back without him, someone says from behind the glass. The words settle over the gate like another layer of rain. Ghost turns sharply toward the voice. His ears lift. A low sound gathers in his chest. Not anger, not fear, but refusal. Price has worked around military dogs long enough to recognize grief. This is not grief. Ghost is alert, focused, waiting. The corporal lifts the leash and notices 3 knots tied near the handle, each one tight and evenly spaced. They do not look accidental. Ghost touches the first knot with his nose, then the second, then the third. Price glances at the others. Did Brooks do this? No one answers. The radio crackles in the guardhouse as the duty officer is called. Ghost steps away from the gate and faces north, toward the dark line of pines beyond the base. He takes 3 steps, stops, and looks back. Price understands only part of the message. Follow. But when he moves toward the dog, Ghost returns to the leash instead. He presses one paw over the knots and holds it there. The gesture is deliberate enough to quiet every man nearby. Captain Rebecca Hayes arrives minutes later, her field jacket pulled over a faded Marine Corps shirt, rain still shining on her shoulders. She does not ask why Ghost is alone. She kneels in front of him and studies his face. Ghost has known her for 4 years. He has accepted food from her hand, slept outside her command tent, and ignored her whenever Isaiah gave him a different order. Now he looks at her as if rank finally matters. Hayes reaches for the leash. Ghost lets her take it, but his eyes remain fixed on the knots. The clasp is intact, Price says. He wasn't separated by force. Hayes runs her thumb over the leather. Mud has dried inside the first knot. The other 2 are wet. Something in her expression changes. Not certainty. Memory. She looks toward the empty road, then back at the dog. Isaiah sent you, she says. Ghost's body softens for the first time. Only slightly. Only enough for them to see it. Hayes stands and turns toward the operations building. Wake the search team. One of the Marines hesitates. Ma'am, they covered that sector twice. Hayes closes her hand around the leash. Then they were looking for the wrong thing. Ghost steps beside her, shoulder aligned. With her knee still facing north. The base behind them begins to stir. Doors open. Engines cough awake. Boots strike wet pavement. Hope does not arrive like sunlight. Not yet. It comes smaller than that, carried through darkness by a tired white dog and an empty leash no one understands. As Hayes passes beneath the floodlights, she looks once more at the 3 knots. Years ago, Isaiah Brooks had tied knots exactly like these during a training exercise. She had laughed and asked him what they meant. His answer returns now, quiet and clear. 1 means alive. 2 means trapped. 3 means bring everyone. 14 hours earlier, the sky above Camp Alder is still bright enough to hide what the storm is bringing. Heat rests over the North Carolina pines, thick with the smell of sap, wet earth, and distant salt from the coast. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks stands beside the canine training field with one hand resting on Ghost's neck. Isaiah is 36, tall and broad through the shoulders, with dark brown skin, close-cut hair, and the quiet posture of a man who notices more than he says. A small silver cross hangs beside his identification tags. It never leaves his chest. Neither does the memory of the day he stopped believing that every search ended when an officer said it did. Years earlier, Isaiah had served beside Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Carter, a patient man who carried peppermint candy in his pocket and called every frightened young Marine son, no matter their rank. During a training emergency in rough mountain country, Samuel became separated from the team. Weather erased the trail. Radios failed. After 2 days, the official search was suspended. Isaiah stayed awake that second night listening to rain strike the roof of the command shelter, certain Samuel was still somewhere beyond the ridge. He was right. A civilian hiking team found Samuel the following morning, alive but too weak to call out. Samuel recovered, but Isaiah never forgot the silence between the order to stop searching and the moment help finally reached him. From then on, he teaches Ghost one lesson more carefully than any command in the manual. A mission does not end simply because a voice disappears. Ghost sits at his left side now, white coat glowing beneath the afternoon sun, amber eyes fixed on Isaiah's hands. The German Shepherd is 6 years old, 82 pounds, and nearly silent when he works. He does not waste movement. He does not bark for praise. When Isaiah changes his breathing, Ghost notices. When Isaiah looks toward a door, Ghost is already watching it. Captain Rebecca Hayes crosses the field carrying 2 bottles of water. "You two have been out here since sunrise," she says. Most reasonable creatures would have stopped an hour ago. Isaiah accepts 1 bottle. Ghost does not believe in reasonable hours. Hayes looks down at the dog. "That makes 2 of you." Ghost's ears turn toward her voice, but his eyes remain on Isaiah. Isaiah removes the black leather leash from his belt and kneels. "One more exercise." Hayes sighs, though a faint smile touches her face. "Of course." Isaiah ties a knot near the handle. Ghost watches every turn of the leather. 1 means alive, Isaiah says. He ties a second knot several inches below the first. 2 means trapped. Then he adds a third, pulling it firm with both hands. 3 means bring everyone. Hayes studies the leash. "You expect him to count knots?" He does not have to count. Isaiah holds the leash beneath Ghost's nose. He remembers patterns. Scent, spacing, pressure. Same as a trail. Hayes folds her arms. And when exactly would he need this? Isaiah clips the leash to Ghost's collar, walks 20 feet across the field, then sits behind a wooden barrier used for search drills. He removes the clasp, ties the 3 knots again, and places the handle in Ghost's mouth. "Home," he says. Ghost turns immediately. He crosses the field, stops in front of Hayes, and lays the leash at her boots. Then he touches each knot with his nose. First, second, third. Hayes looks toward Isaiah behind the barrier. That is unsettling. That is insurance. Isaiah rises and walks back. Ghost meets him halfway, tail moving once. Isaiah places a hand against the dog's chest. Beneath the white fur, the heartbeat is steady. If I cannot speak, he still can. Hayes lifts the leash. And if he returns with this, what am I supposed to do? Isaiah's expression remains calm, but something older passes through his eyes. Believe him before you believe the silence. Thunder murmurs far beyond the trees. The sound is low, almost gentle, but Ghost turns toward it. A breeze crosses the field and carries the first cool edge of rain. Minutes later, a communications officer calls from the operations building. An emergency signal has appeared near an abandoned relay station 12 miles north of the base. It lasts 9 seconds, vanishes, then returns once more. The access roads are already soft from 3 days of rain, and the main storm is expected before nightfall. Hayes reads the report twice. It could be equipment failure. Isaiah clips the leash to Ghost's collar. Then we will confirm it. Take a second vehicle. The north road will not hold two. Hayes looks at the clouds gathering above the pines. Report every 15 minutes. Isaiah nods. He opens the passenger door of his field vehicle, and Ghost jumps inside, settling upright with the discipline of a Marine awaiting orders. Before Isaiah closes the door, Hayes holds up the leash. 1 means alive. 2 means trapped. 3 means bring everyone. Isaiah gives her the smallest smile. You were listening. He takes the leash, climbs behind the wheel, and drives toward the northern gate. The first drops strike the windshield as Camp Alder disappears behind them. Ghost watches the darkening road. Isaiah turns on the radio and hears only a faint wash of static. Ahead, the pines bend beneath a wind that has not yet reached the base, and somewhere beyond them, a signal is waiting for 2 souls trained never to ignore a call for help. The storm closes over the road 1 mile at a time, taking the daylight first, then the signal, and soon, the sound of Isaiah Brooks's voice. By the time Isaiah Brooks and Ghost reach the northern service road, the rain is falling hard enough to erase the tire tracks behind them. Water runs across the cracked pavement in silver sheets. Pine branches bow low over the road, brushing the roof of the vehicle with a dry scraping sound beneath the storm. Isaiah keeps both hands steady on the wheel. Ghost sits upright beside him, white coat dim in the blue light of the dashboard, ears turning toward every shift in the wind. The emergency signal appears again on the receiver. 9 seconds of weak transmission. Then silence. Isaiah glances at the coordinates. 2 miles ahead. Ghost looks toward the windshield. The road narrows and begins to climb. On one side, the forest rises dark and close. On the other, the ground falls away into a drainage hollow swollen with rain. Isaiah slows to 15 miles per hour. The radio fills with static. Camp Alder, this is Staff Sergeant Brooks. Approaching relay station. Visibility poor. Road conditions unstable. No answer comes back. Only a thin electronic hiss. Isaiah waits 3 seconds, then repeats the call. Still nothing. Ghost lowers his nose toward the passenger window. His breathing changes. Isaiah notices. You have something? Ghost does not bark. He stares into the trees ahead. A shape moves between the trunks, too quick to identify, then disappears behind the curtain of rain. Isaiah stops the vehicle. The old relay station stands another quarter-mile uphill, a concrete building no larger than a 2-car garage, surrounded by rusted fencing and leaning utility poles. One exterior light flickers above the door. It should not have power. Isaiah reaches for the leash. Stay close. Ghost steps into the rain and immediately lowers his nose to the ground. The scent is broken by water, but not gone. He moves along the edge of the road, pauses near a patch of crushed fern, then looks back at Isaiah. Fresh boot prints lead away from the relay station and into the woods. The heel pattern is narrow. Civilian. Isaiah kneels without touching them. Beside the prints lies a small strip of orange plastic, the kind used on electrical equipment tags. It is clean. Too clean for something left in the forest. Isaiah raises the radio again. Camp Alder, possible unauthorized presence at the North Relay site. Requesting confirmation of maintenance personnel. Static answers. Ghost turns sharply toward the building. The metal door stands slightly open. A weak amber glow pulses from inside. Isaiah approaches slowly, not from fear, but from habit. He places one hand against Ghost's shoulder, and the dog becomes still. Inside, the air smells of dust, wet concrete, and warm circuitry. A portable transmitter rests on a workbench. Its display flashes the same coordinates Isaiah has been following. Someone has connected it to an old emergency battery. The unit is warm, recently used. Ghost moves to the far wall and sniffs a muddy glove lying beneath a chair. Isaiah studies the room. No tools. No maintenance log. No vehicle outside. Whoever activated the signal has already left. Thunder breaks directly overhead. The floor trembles. Dust falls from a ceiling seam. Isaiah looks toward the open door just as the light outside vanishes. The storm has swallowed the last of the afternoon. He reaches for the transmitter, intending to shut it down, when Ghost gives a single low warning sound. Not at the machine. At the ground. Isaiah freezes. Beneath the sound of rain comes another noise, deep and uneven, like stones rolling in a metal drum. The hillside is moving. Out. Ghost turns at once. They reach the doorway as water, soil, and broken branches sweep across the road below. The vehicle shifts several inches, then settles against a bank of mud. The direct route back to Camp Alder disappears beneath the slide. Isaiah watches the slope for movement. We are walking. He retrieves the emergency pack, a flashlight, a thermal blanket, and the black leather leash. The rain strikes colder now. Ghost leads them around the side of the building, where an old utility trail cuts north through the trees. According to the map, it circles toward a gravel fire road 4 miles away. They travel less than half a mile before the earth drops beneath Isaiah's left boot. The ground does not collapse violently. It simply gives way, softened by days of water. Isaiah falls to one knee and catches himself against a pine trunk. Pain travels through his lower leg, sharp enough to stop his breath. Ghost is beside him instantly, pressing his shoulder beneath Isaiah's hand. I am all right. The words are quiet, meant as much for the dog as for himself. Isaiah tests his weight. The leg holds, but not well. He looks back toward the relay station. Through the rain, a flashlight beam appears between the trees. Then another. Someone else is moving near the building. Ghost sees it too. His body becomes rigid. Isaiah switches off his own light. The two beams sweep across the trail, searching, not calling, not identifying themselves. Isaiah understands the difference. He guides Ghost away from the path and into the shelter of thick pines. For several minutes, they remain still while rain drums against leaves and the unknown lights drift closer. Isaiah reaches for the radio again, but the screen is dark. Water has entered the casing. He removes the battery, wipes it, and tries once more. Nothing. The storm has taken the road, the signal, and now the last easy way to speak. Ghost touches his nose to the leash at Isaiah's belt. Isaiah looks down at him. In the dark, the white fur around the dog's face seems almost luminous. Not yet, Isaiah whispers. We stay together. Far behind them, one of the flashlight beams stops. A voice carries faintly through the trees, too distant to make out. Ghost turns toward it, then back to Isaiah. The Marine listens to the rain, to his own breathing, and to the slow movement of the hillside beneath their boots. Somewhere ahead is the old fire road. Somewhere behind are people who should not be there. And between those two truths, the forest is closing one path at a time. At 4:26 in the morning, the operations building at Camp Alder wakes all at once. Lights burn across the rain-streaked windows. Radios crackle. Boots strike the tile with the hard rhythm of men and women who have learned that hope sometimes arrives disguised as an order. Ghost stands beside Captain Rebecca Hayes while the first search team gathers around the long table. Mud dries along the white German shepherd's legs. His breathing is controlled, but his eyes never leave the black leather leash in Hayes's hand. Gunnery Sergeant Cole Mercer enters last, carrying a folded terrain map and the exhaustion of someone who has already searched the same woods twice. He is 42, broad through the chest, with gray beginning at his temples and a voice worn rough by years of giving commands in bad weather. His gaze settles on Ghost, then on the empty clasp. Where did they find him? Main gate, Hayes says. He came in from the north road. Mercer opens the map. That road is buried. Our first team reached the relay station from the west and found Brooks's vehicle. No sign of him beyond the washout. Hayes places the leash across the table. Look at the knots. Mercer studies them for less than a second. Leather twists when it drags through brush. Ghost steps forward. His ears rise. Hayes touches the first knot. Isaiah trained him to carry this signal. Mercer looks at her. You are certain? I watched him teach it. A younger Marine, near the wall, shifts his weight. Ma'am, if Ghost knew where Staff Sergeant Brooks was, why did he leave him? The room becomes still. Ghost turns toward the speaker. He does not growl. He simply holds the Marine's gaze until the man looks away. Mercer's expression hardens, not at the dog, but at the question. A canine does not abandon a handler without reason. Then give me the reason, Hayes says. Mercer looks down at the map again. Storm confusion. Scent loss. Injury. There are a dozen possibilities. And one possibility is that Brooks sent him. Hayes slides the leash closer. The clasp is intact. Isaiah removed it himself. Ghost touches the leather with his nose. First knot. Second knot. Third knot. Then he walks to the door. Mercer watches him. That could be habit. Hayes opens the door. Ghost does not leave. Instead, he crosses the hallway toward the canine quarters. The Marines follow at a distance. Rain taps softly against the metal roof as Ghost passes his own kennel without stopping. He turns into the small equipment room assigned to Isaiah and stands before a narrow cot. The blanket is folded with military precision. A clean uniform hangs from a wall hook. On the shelf above the bed rests a spare set of identification tags, a framed photograph of Isaiah with an older Marine, and a wooden box no larger than a Bible. Ghost rises on his hind legs and presses his nose to the identification tags. They chime against the shelf. Then he places the leash beneath them. Hayes remembers Isaiah's words from the training field. Believe him before you believe the silence. Mercer crouches beside the dog. Show me, he says quietly. Ghost looks toward him, but does not move. Mercer reaches for the leash. Ghost places one paw across it. The message is clear. Not yet. Hayes kneels and rests her hand near the third knot without touching it. Alive, she says. Ghost's ears lift. Trapped. His tail moves once. Bring everyone. Ghost removes his paw. Mercer exhales through his nose. Doubt does not vanish from his face, but something opens behind it. A door. A chance. We take 2 teams, he says. One follows the last confirmed route. The other follows the dog. Outside, engines turn over beneath the fading rain. Navy Corpsman Hannah Reed arrives carrying a medical pack nearly half her size. She is 34, calm-eyed, and known for speaking gently when everyone else begins to raise their voices. She kneels beside Ghost and checks his paws. He has covered miles, she says. The pads are worn, but he can still walk. Can he lead? Mercer asks. Hannah looks at Ghost rather than answering for him. The dog takes the leash in his mouth and heads toward the northern vehicle bay. I believe he just did, she says. As the teams load equipment, one Marine stands near the gate, watching Ghost with unease. What if he only came back because Brooks is gone? Hayes hears him. She turns, her face quiet beneath the floodlights. Then he would be waiting for us to mourn. Across the pavement, Ghost stops beside the lead vehicle and looks toward the black wall of trees beyond Camp Alder. His body is tired. His coat is stained, but every line of him points forward. Hayes closes her hand around the 3 knots. He is not waiting for morning, she says. He is waiting for us to listen. North of the hunting shelter, the forest changes. The pines grow closer together, their trunks dark with rain, and the ground rises in long, uneven folds that do not appear on the current map. Ghost moves carefully, carrying the leather leash between his teeth. Captain Rebecca Hayes follows the faint marks left beneath the trees, while Gunnery Sergeant Cole Mercer keeps the team within sight of one another. Navy Corpsman Hannah Reed walks near the middle, listening to the woods as much as watching them. The storm has passed, but water still falls from the branches in slow, heavy drops. Every sound feels separated from the next. A boot pressing into mud. A buckle shifting against a pack. Ghost breathing through his nose. After half a mile, the dog stops beside a wide pine and sets the leash down. He smells the handle, then walks 20 feet forward and waits. Hayes picks up the leash. The first knot is near her hand. The second sits several inches below it. The third is farther away than she remembers. She studies the spacing. These are not even, she says. Mercer looks back. They were even at the base. No, we assumed they were. Hayes stretches the leather between both hands. Mud is pressed deep into the first knot, dry red clay from the road near the relay station. The second knot carries nearly black soil, rich and wet, unlike anything around the shelter. The third smells faintly of pine resin and old machine oil. Hannah steps closer. 3 locations. Hayes nods, or 3 turns. Ghost touches the first knot with his nose, then walks to the right side of the pine. Hayes follows. 20 yards beyond the tree, the ground changes from red clay to dark soil. Ghost stops again. He returns to the leash and touches the second knot. Mercer unfolds the older terrain map found in Isaiah's emergency pack. The paper is faded, its corners softened by years of use. A thin service line runs north from the relay station, then bends east toward a maintenance corridor removed from newer maps. This route was closed before Camp Alder expanded, Mercer says. Old utility access. Hayes holds the leash beside the map. The distance between the first and second knots is short. The distance between the second and third is nearly twice as long. Isaiah had used spacing exercises with Ghost during training, teaching him to associate intervals with changes in direction. What looked like a rescue signal is something more. It is a path written in leather, scent, and memory. Ghost waits beside the dark soil. Hayes points east. Show us. The dog turns immediately. He leads them through a narrow stand of young pines, across a shallow creek, and toward higher ground where the air begins to smell of rust. The farther they travel, the stronger the scent becomes. Old metal, damp concrete, oil sealed inside machinery no one has touched in years. Mercer checks the map again. There should be nothing here. Ghost pauses beside a cedar stump and touches the third knot. Then he looks straight ahead. Hidden beneath vines and fallen branches is a low steel marker, barely 6 inches above the ground. Most of its lettering has faded, but Hayes wipes away the moss and finds 2 words stamped into the surface. : For 11 minutes. No sound comes from beneath the metal plate. The forest holds its breath with them. Ghost remains flat against the ground, ears forward, eyes fixed on a place no human can see. Captain Rebecca Hayes kneels beside him with one hand resting on the wet earth. Gunnery Sergeant Cole Mercer studies the buried entrance while the engineering team clears vines, roots, and packed soil from the old concrete wall. Navy Corpsman Hannah Reed keeps her ear close to the plate, listening for any sign that the tapping will return. Dawn has fully arrived, but the light beneath the trees is colorless. It slips through the branches without warmth. Water drips from the leaves and strikes the steel in a slow, hollow rhythm. Then Ghost lifts his head. 1 second later, a single tap answers from below. Weak, deliberate, alive. He heard us, Hannah says. Hayes leans close to the plate. Isaiah, this is Captain Hayes. We are above you. Tap once if you understand. The silence stretches long enough to hurt. 1 tap comes back. Ghost releases a low breath and presses his nose against the metal. Mercer looks toward the engineers. How fast can we open the entrance? Staff Sergeant Nolan Pierce, the senior engineer, wipes mud from the old construction markings. The main doorway is behind at least 8 feet of collapsed soil. Maybe more. We move too much weight from the wrong side. The ground could settle. Another access point? The map shows a maintenance corridor running under this slope. No details beyond that. Hayes looks at the ventilation pipe. Can we reach him through there? Pierce shakes his head. The pipe is barely 10 inches wide. Hannah taps twice on the plate, pauses, then taps once. A field code asking about breathing. No response. She repeats it. This time, 2 weak taps return. He is having trouble, she says. Ghost stands. Without waiting for a command, he circles away from the plate and moves downhill toward the buried concrete line. Hayes follows him through the brush. 30 yards from the first access point, Ghost stops near a sunken patch of ground covered by pine needles. He smells the soil, moves 3 feet to the left, and stops again. Mercer drives a metal probe into the earth. It sinks farther than expected. Hollow space, he says. The engineers clear the surface carefully and uncover a rectangular concrete hatch. Its hinges are rusted, but the frame is intact. Pierce studies it. This was an emergency service entrance. The lock has fused shut. Cutting it will take time. Ghost lowers his nose to the seam. His ears move. He hears something inside. Hayes kneels. Isaiah. No tapping answers. The engineering saw begins to work through the corroded metal, its sound muffled beneath blankets to reduce vibration. Minutes pass slowly. Every few seconds, Hayes looks back toward the first plate as though willing it to speak. Hannah checks her watch. If that chamber is sealed, the air is limited. Mercer says nothing. He does not need to. At last, the hatch gives way with a low groan. Cold air rises from below carrying the scent of wet stone, dust, and old oil. Ghost steps forward, but Hayes catches his harness. Wait. Pierce shines a light down a narrow ladder into darkness. The shaft descends nearly 20 feet. At the bottom, a corridor disappears north beneath the hillside. No water moves through it. No debris blocks the first section. Mercer goes down first, followed by Hayes, Hannah, Pierce, and Ghost. The white German shepherd descends in a support sling, silent and steady. When his paws touch the concrete floor, he begins working immediately. His nose traces the wall, then the ground, then the air. The corridor is barely 6 feet high and lined with rusted cable brackets. Their lights reveal faded arrows, peeling warning signs, and doors sealed by time. The air is colder here. Every sound travels farther than it should. Ghost leads them past 2 empty rooms and stops beside a broken field radio. Isaiah's radio. The casing is cracked, the battery removed. Beside it lies the missing thermal blanket, neatly folded beneath a small vent as if someone used it to block a draft. Hannah touches the fabric. He was here. Hayes calls into the tunnel. Isaiah. Her voice runs ahead of them and returns thinner. No answer. Ghost searches the floor, then turns toward a doorway partly hidden behind a fallen storage cabinet. The engineers shift it carefully. Beyond the doorway is a maintenance chamber with a steel table, old wiring, and a second ventilation pipe. Empty. Mercer scans the walls. This has to be the room under the plate. Hayes finds 3 shallow marks on the table. The same pattern. 1, 2, 3. But Isaiah is gone. Hannah checks the dust near the far wall. There are drag marks. They lead to a narrow opening where part of the concrete has cracked inward, revealing another passage not shown on the map. Ghost enters first. 10 feet beyond, he stops. The passage ends at a solid wall of packed earth and broken stone. Hayes feels the hope in the tunnel falter. They have found the signal. They have found the chamber. They have found every sign that Isaiah was alive. But they have not found him. Mercer shines his light across the blocked passage. He may have moved before the collapse. Ghost turns away from the wall. He returns to the empty chamber and circles beneath the steel table. Then he lies down. His ears flatten against the concrete floor. Hannah raises one hand. Everyone becomes still. The tunnel falls silent except for their breathing. From somewhere below, deeper than the corridor and too faint to locate, comes one soft knock. Not 3. Not twice. Only 1. Ghost closes his eyes and presses his white muzzle to the floor, directly above the sound. The single knock is so faint that no one moves at first. It seems less like a sound than a memory traveling through concrete. Ghost hears it again before the others do. His ears rise. He shifts 2 feet to the right, lowers his chest, and presses one paw against the floor. Navy Corpsman Hannah Reed kneels beside him and places her palm flat against the cold surface. There is a chamber below us, she says. Gunnery Sergeant Cole Mercer shines his light across the floor. The concrete looks solid, poured decades ago in one unbroken slab. No hatch, no seam, no marking. Captain Rebecca Hayes studies the old maintenance room, searching for anything the builders might have hidden in plain sight. Rusted cable brackets line the walls. A drain sits beneath the steel table. Near the far corner, half covered by dust, a small metal plate bears a faded arrow pointing down. Staff Sergeant Nolan Pierce crouches beside it and wipes the surface clean. Secondary service level, he says. It was never added to the current plans. Hannah taps once against the floor. They wait. 1 weak answer comes from below. Ghost closes his eyes for a moment, then opens them and looks directly at Hayes. There is no panic in him, only urgency. Pierce checks the slab with a handheld sensor. The device gives a soft tone near the center of the room. There is an empty space about 7 feet down, maybe 8. Mercer looks toward the ceiling. Can we open it without bringing the room down? Pierce studies the supports, the cracks, and the old steel frame beneath the table. Not from the middle. The slab carries too much weight. We need the original access point. Ghost rises and walks toward the broken radio. He smells the casing, then the floor beneath it. His nose follows a narrow line of dust to the wall. There, behind a rusted cabinet, he begins scratching gently at the baseboard. Mercer and Pierce move the cabinet aside. A square panel appears, no wider than 2 feet, painted the same gray as the wall. Its latch is hidden beneath layers of corrosion. Good boy, Hayes whispers. Ghost does not look at her. His attention remains on the panel. Pierce works the latch free. When the panel opens, cold air moves through the room, carrying the smell of stone, old wiring, and something warm beneath it. Burned plastic. Hannah notices it too. Battery heat, she says. He may have used the radio battery to stay warm. Beyond the panel, a narrow shaft angles downward. It is too small for a person to enter upright. The opening leads to a service crawl space beneath the room. Ghost steps forward immediately. Hayes takes hold of his harness. Easy. Pierce shines a light through the gap. The beam reveals dust, pipes, and a passage barely 3 feet high. 20 feet in, the crawl space turns out of sight. A person could fit, Pierce says. Barely. Hannah removes her medical pack and repacks only what she can carry close to her body. I am going in. Mercer starts to object, but she meets his eyes. If he has been in there all night, he needs medical care before we move him. Hayes looks at Ghost. He goes with you. The white German shepherd lowers himself and crawls into the passage first. Hannah follows, inching forward on her elbows while Mercer and Hayes feed a safety line behind her. The space grows colder with every foot. Dust clings to Ghost's coat. Pipes groan softly above them. Then the passage widens just enough for Hannah to kneel. Her flashlight finds a second opening ahead, partly blocked by fallen insulation and a bent metal grate. Ghost squeezes through first. He disappears into darkness. For one long second, no sound returns. Then his tail strikes the metal once. Hannah pushes the grate aside and crawls after him. The lower chamber is small, no larger than a storage closet. A weak amber glow comes from a radio battery wrapped inside the thermal blanket. Beside it lies Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks. His back rests against the wall. One leg is extended carefully in front of him. His dark brown skin is pale with cold, and dust marks his uniform, but his eyes are open. Ghost reaches him in 3 quick steps. The dog presses his white head against Isaiah's chest and becomes perfectly still. Isaiah's hand lifts slowly. His fingers settle into the fur behind Ghost's ears. You made them listen, he whispers. His voice is dry and barely more than breath. Ghost closes his eyes. Hannah moves beside them and checks Isaiah's pulse, his breathing, and the warmth in his hands. You are not finished yet, Staff Sergeant. Isaiah looks toward the opening behind her. How many came? Everyone you asked for. A tired smile touches his face. Good. Hayes's voice travels down the passage through the open panel. Isaiah, can you hear me? He turns his head toward the sound. Loud and clear, Captain. Relief moves through the rooms above them. Quiet, but unmistakable. Hannah gives Isaiah water in careful sips and wraps another thermal layer around his shoulders. We are going to bring you out slowly. Isaiah keeps one hand on Ghost. He goes first. Hannah looks at the dog, then back at him. He already did. Ghost lifts his head and meets Isaiah's eyes. In the weak amber light, the white fur and the Marine's dark hand rest together like 2 halves of the same promise, one that crossed rain, silence, and buried miles without ever breaking. The rescue team brings Isaiah Brooks out of the lower chamber just after sunrise. The journey through the service passage is slow, measured in careful breaths and whispered instructions. Ghost walks beside him whenever the narrow space allows, his shoulder brushing the stretcher frame as though he can steady it by touch alone. When they reach the surface, morning light pours through the pines in pale gold. The storm has washed the air clean. Water shines on every branch. For several seconds, no one speaks. The Marines gathered near the open hatch simply watch as Isaiah appears beneath the trees, wrapped in thermal blankets, one hand still resting in the white fur beside him. Captain Rebecca Hayes lowers her head, not in ceremony, but in relief. Gunnery Sergeant Cole Mercer turns away long enough to clear his throat. Hannah Reed checks Isaiah again before the team begins the return to Camp Alder. You are going to the medical center, she tells him. Isaiah looks toward Ghost. He comes with me. I expected that answer. The ride back takes nearly an hour. Ghost sits on the floor beside the stretcher, refusing the empty seat offered to him. Each time the vehicle shifts over the rough road, he lifts his head and watches Isaiah's face. Isaiah sleeps for only a few minutes at a time. Whenever he wakes, his hand reaches down until it finds the dog's neck. No command passes between them. None is needed. At Camp Alder, the main road is lined with Marines who have heard the news but do not cheer. The moment feels too fragile for noise. They stand in silence as the medical vehicle enters through the gate. Some remove their caps. Others simply place a hand over their hearts. Ghost looks through the open rear doors, alert and solemn, as if he understands that the mission is not complete until Isaiah crosses the threshold of the medical center. Inside, the doctors treat exhaustion, exposure, and the injury to Isaiah's leg. They tell him he was fortunate. Isaiah does not argue, but he knows fortune did not tie 3 knots, cross 12 miles of storm, and return with help. Ghost waits outside the recovery room with the black leather leash between his paws. He refuses food until Hannah sits beside him and breaks a biscuit into small pieces. Even then, he eats only after the door opens and Isaiah's voice calls his name. Ghost rises so quickly that the leash slides across the floor. Hayes carries it into the room. Isaiah is sitting upright against white pillows, his dark face tired but warm with life. Sunlight from the window falls across the bed and catches the silver cross resting beside his identification tags. Ghost approaches slowly. For the first time since the storm, he seems uncertain. Isaiah opens one hand. "Come here, partner." The dog places his head against Isaiah's chest. Isaiah closes his eyes. His fingers move through the thick white fur, finding the familiar place behind Ghost's ears. The room becomes quiet enough to hear the soft rhythm of the dog's breathing. Hayes lays the leash across Isaiah's lap. The 3 knots remain tight, stained with red clay, dark soil, and pine resin. "You built us a map," she says. Isaiah looks down at the leather. "I built him a way to speak." Mercer stands near the door. We almost stopped listening. Isaiah meets his eyes without judgment. "But you did not." Ghost lifts his nose toward the knots. Isaiah smiles faintly and begins to loosen the first one. His hands move slowly. "Alive," he says. The knot gives way. He works on the second. "Trapped." The leather straightens another few inches. Then he reaches the third. Ghost watches him closely. Isaiah pauses before pulling it free. "Bring everyone." When the final knot opens, the leash lies smooth across his lap again. Hayes looks toward the dog. "What does it mean now?" Isaiah clips the metal clasp gently to Ghost's collar. "It means we go home together." 3 weeks later, Isaiah walks through the northern gate with a brace beneath his uniform and Ghost at his left side. The pines are bright beneath a clear Carolina sky. Repairs have begun on the old road, and the abandoned relay site has been sealed. No one has yet explained who activated the false emergency signal or why strangers were moving through the forest that night, but the investigation continues. Isaiah does not dwell on the unanswered questions. Some truths arrive later. Some matter less than the life preserved while waiting for them. At the training field, Hayes, Mercer, Hannah, and several younger Marines stand near the wooden barrier where the lesson began. Isaiah removes the leash and places it inside a glass case mounted beside the canine quarters. The clay stains remain. So do the faint marks where the knots once held. Beneath the case is a small brass plate with no rank, no date, and no mention of heroism. It carries only 5 words. "Listen when loyalty comes home." Ghost sits beside Isaiah, white coat shining in the afternoon sun. Isaiah rests a dark hand against his shoulder. Beyond them, the base returns to its ordinary rhythm. Engines start. Boots cross gravel. A flag moves softly above the buildings. Nothing in the world appears miraculous. Yet a man is standing where an empty place had almost been prepared for him, and a dog who cannot speak has already said everything that mattered.